Hello, my beautiful friends. I am Laurel Bleadon-Maffei with Illuminating Souls, welcoming you to this episode of Sleepy Bedtime Blessings, a podcast designed to help you rest, relax, and fall asleep, all while deepening in your connection with your beautiful team of angels who love you so. If we're meeting for the first time, I am an angelic practitioner, a spiritual teacher, and an encourager of souls. And this means that I have the best job ever. I am here to help you open to your connection with your beautiful team of angels. And I do this through one-on-one angel sessions, soul mentoring, and a variety of classes designed to inspire your spirit. And you can visit me at my website, illuminatingsouls.com, to learn more and also to sign up for my daily inspiration email blast. And I will send you an inspiring email every weekday. So lots of ways that we can connect. But for now, the angels and I are here to help you come into a beautiful expanse of rest. So I invite you to take some nice deep breaths in and out as the love of the angels flows to you now. If you've been listening to this podcast for a while, you know that I am someone who loves sleep podcasts, and I listen to one every night. And I find that they help build a bridge between my waking consciousness and drifting off into that delicious, mysterious experience of sleep. I find sleep to be fascinating. It just happens. It just is this state of floating consciousness that all of us go into. And it helps our bodies and our minds to reset. And so I have a healthy respect for the experience of sleep, and also for how frustrating it can be when sleep feels elusive. So if you are at all sleep challenged, I'm sure you've tried many, many things. And my hope is that you will be able to build a relationship with this podcast. And so the sound of my voice and the rhythm of the stories I share with you will help bring a vibrational, experiential resource for you that will help you drift off. And if you don't drift off, hopefully I'll get to be good company for you. Just last night, I had one of those wake-ups in the wee hours of the morning. And I looked at the clock, hoping it was going to say 5 a.m. because that would have meant that I had made it through the night. And instead, it was one of those early morning numbers, and I thought, because I could feel that my consciousness was in its bright, shiny space, and it wasn't going to be easy to drift back off, and so I plugged in a sleep podcast. I've been listening to the Sleepy Bookshelves edition of Little Women, and I have absolutely loved it. And I had the last and final installment, and I had been saving it because once I listened to it, it would be over. And so it's like I broke out the big guns last night. I was like, okay, let's go. Let's listen to the last chapter of Little Women. So if it didn't put me to sleep, at least I would be entertained. And if I did drift off to sleep, then I could always listen to it later. And so I listened to a good bit of it. I think I probably fell asleep after about half an hour, and their episodes tend to be about an hour long. So it was a really helpful experience because I wasn't awake, stressing out about being awake. I let my consciousness shift into enjoying the story. And I had hoped, and fortunately it worked out for me, that at some point I would drift back off because I knew that my body was tired. And so it worked. Mission accomplished. I fell back to sleep. And I got to listen to part of the podcast that I had wanted to hear. So my hope is this podcast is able to support you in the same way. So whether you listen to it as you drift off to sleep first thing in the evening, or you wake up in the middle of the night and you need some support, and also I know many of you listen during the daytime, and we keep you company as you go about your day. So however you use this podcast, you have my blessing and my gratitude. I almost wasn't sure if I was going to record an episode for you. I was taking a little bit of time off for the holidays, so we did a replay on Christmas Day, and I was contemplating doing another replay, but I thought, I want to be here with you. I love recording these episodes for you. I love being with the angels. I love getting to shine love and ripple it out into the world with you. And so I thought, this is where I want to be. As I record this, it is early morning. The sun has not yet come up. We are having a rainy morning here in the Bay Area, so it feels super cozy. And I feel this light streaming in. As I record this, we are coming upon the end of the year of 2022, and for all I know, you could be listening to this in 2025. So whenever you hear this, it'll all still be relevant. I hope it'll be meaningful. I always think of this time of year as a time for gentle reflection of what growth opportunities, what blessings, what showed up on the timeline of this year. And as I contemplate this past year, one of the biggest lights of this year has been this podcast and you. I have found my way into the joy of storytelling, and not only sharing my own stories, but helping other people open to their stories as well. When I started this year, I did not know that the class I created, The Power of Your Voice, and the Soul Stories Guild, which was born out of it, would become such a significant part of my life. And it has truly become such a blessing and a joy for me. And so whenever I'm wrapping up a year and moving into a new one, I'm not someone who sets goals. I no longer enjoy foisting my will upon life. I much prefer the concept of blossoming open, of knowing that sparks of inspiration will find me at some point, because I am, just like you are, an ever-evolving being. And it is our nature, it is our essence to pivot towards the light. And all we need is a little bit of encouragement and support and love. And God willing, we flourish. So I feel like this year was filled with a lot of goodness, and goodness that we've had an opportunity to share together. It's wonderful. Goodness shared is just an incredible experience. So my hope is that this podcast is bringing you goodness as well. And I feel the angels here. So I'm going to call them in so that you know they are here as well. And beautiful angels on high, I am so deeply grateful for your loving presence and support. Thank you, angels, for cultivating this beautiful sanctuary of light where we can gather together and feel the love and come into a sweet expanse of rest and receiving of light. And so, angels, I ask that you infuse this broadcast with divine love. And this love ripples out into the hearts of all who listen to this broadcast and beyond. I ask that you clear our energy fields through the heart of God, clearing anything that no longer serves us, anything that does not belong to us. So, dear ones, just take some nice deep breaths in as the angels bring to you these waves of love. Just allowing your body to receive this love and to relax. And imagine, if you will, that the room or the space you are in is being filled with a soft pink light. And this light is filled with love that has been calibrated just for you. That the angels are aware of all that is transpiring in your life and in your heart. And they bring this love to you now to support you. The angels are here to help ease anything that feels like a burden to you. And they are here to help you come into a deeper space of self-love, loving self. You would think that learning to love ourselves would be easy, and truly it can be one of the deepest life lessons. So just breathe in. The angels are going to bring to you waves of self-love, self-reflection, learning to connect with your authentic self, with the beauty of your spirit, the magnificence of your soul, that you are a wise, divine being who has come here to have a human experience. And you are a blessing in this world. You are precious, and this world is better because you are here. So take a big deep breath in. And if self-love feels elusive to you, ask the angels, help me learn how to love myself. Help me experience the overflow of love that is available to me. And I've probably shared this with you before, but self-love was one of the first qualities I worked with when I started my journey, because I did not know how to love myself. I could feel love when other people loved me, but when that love was seemingly removed, I had a hard time loving myself. So I asked for help. Teach me to love myself. And I can tell you it is years later and I love myself. It's not this narcissistic, I'm so awesome and everyone should love me too kind of vibe, but rather I honor who I am. I acknowledge the complexity of being that I am. I have compassion for that which challenges me. I enjoy that which is unique and creative about myself. So self-love doesn't have to just be, I'm awesome all the time. For me, it helped to acknowledge that I am a divine being having a human experience. And I am not my flaws, and I am not my wounds. They are simply expressions of my experiences here on this planet. The truth is, I am a beloved of God, and you are as well. That this universe is filled with so much love and understanding for you. And we may not always see this mirrored back on the earth plane. Goodness knows if we spend enough time on social media, we will know there are many wounded people who seek to foist their wounds upon others. But for me, what has really helped is to focus upon the divine light, where there is always love. And the more I have learned to embody this love, the easier it has become to love myself and others too. So I invite you to take a deep breath in, allowing this wellspring of love to pour over you, to bring you healing, to bring you compassion, to help you connect with your innate wholeness. Take a deep, deep breath in into the center of your being. As you do, your angels are shining love upon you. They are singing your name in joy and celebration. They are so deeply grateful for this opportunity to love you and help you remember who you are and the true magnificence of your beingness. Take another nice deep breath in, breathing in this beautiful, joyful expression of love that flows to you now. And you don't have to feel joyful, it's just how the angels feel in this moment. And just allow your body to grow heavy. And you can drift off to sleep whenever sleep calls to you. And while you rest, your angels will be with you, shining love for you. They will take good care of you as you drift off. And my beautiful, beloved friend, as you rest, I'm going to tell you a story. So, for this episode, this is going to be the last episode that I publish in 2022. So, the next episode will be published in 2023. And before you get your hopes up, I don't have any big, huge insights about the past year. This is not necessarily going to be a broadcast that will have an expiration date. So if you're listening to this 3 years from now, every year has its own personality. And for each of us, we can look back at the year and find out where was our growth cycle, what were our challenges, what were our blessings. And life is life, even when the calendar turns to a new year. We are still who we are as we come into the new year. I really, though, love just looking back and what opportunities found me this year. And perhaps we'll talk about that more in another episode, but I thought for this episode, I would share with you some random memories that I have about New Year's Eves across the timeline of my life. So I'm 60. So I have a lot of New Year's memories. And I'm really glad that I do, because these days I'm asleep. I no longer feel the magic of staying awake until midnight. But I'll talk to you more about that. But I thought I would share with you some of the memories that I have across my timeline of how I spent New Year's Eves. And perhaps this will be an invitation for you to look at your past as well. And maybe there are some lovely and maybe not so lovely memories about New Year's Eves in your life. So my first memory that I have was as a little girl. I don't know how old I would have been, but it must have been old enough that my brother could stay home with my sister and I. My brother's 4 years older than I am, because I don't remember there being a babysitter involved. But my parents went to this dinner dance at the temple for New Year's Eve. And it was one of those evenings where they both got dressed up. I don't know if you have any of those memories of your parents getting dressed up to go somewhere. So my dad was in his suit and my mom was in a beautiful dress and, heels and pantyhose and jewelry and perfume of some kind. And I don't know, I always loved to see my parents getting dressed up. There just was always just a sweet feeling about that. And I seem to recall that my parents moved a television up into our room so that we could watch TV and watch all the New Year's Eve specials. Back then it was a big deal to watch the ball drop. It was the Dick Clark Rockin' New Year's Eve or something like that. So my sister and I just remember we were in our pajamas. We had some kind of food we could have upstairs, which was unusual because we usually didn't eat in our bedroom. But it seemed to me that my sister and I felt like it was our own party in our pajamas, having some kind of snack and having the TV in our room, watching Dick Clark rockin' New Year's Eve, getting to stay up until midnight. And I don't even know that we did. I don't remember that part. I will say, though, that is one of my first memories of New Year's Eve. And I also remember my parents brought home like party favors, and some kind of food from the dinner dance. As I've shared with you before, I am deeply imprinted with food, so those food memories go into my Rolodex. So there was some sort of delicious treat that we got as a result, but I don't think we would have gotten it until the next morning, because I do not remember being awake by the time my parents made it home. And then I don't really have any New Year's memories for a long time after that. So there is nothing specific that stands out. I'm sure that I, celebrated with my sister or my parents, but I don't remember those. I didn't really tune into New Year's Eve again until I was a teenager. And there were certainly memories of hanging out with my friends for New Year's Eve. And there was one experience that was really interesting, but I'm going to come back to that one. I don't want to use that one just quite yet. I'm going to sort of use that a little later in the episode because it's going to turn into a longer story. So I'm going to skip over that one. For many years, my friends and I would find a hotel somewhere in the Chicago area that was having some sort of New Year's Eve celebration. And we would go there and maybe get a room for the night so we could drink. And we would go and have a great time. I have pictures of dancing with my friends and getting all dressed up. And so those were wonderful experiences. And at one point, when I was in college, I drove to New York with two of my friends. We drove in my friend's old Honda Civic. It was before Hondas were everywhere. And it was a stick shift, and I didn't know how to drive stick. And so I had to learn because we had to take turns driving. I think it was an 18-hour drive. And so I learned enough to get the car from first to fifth gear on the freeway. But I couldn't do much more than that. And we would take turns sleeping as we drove across the country from Chicago to New York. And we stayed at a hotel in Times Square. And we went to see a chorus line on Broadway. This would have been in the early 80s. And then we went to Times Square on New Year's Eve. And this was before Times Square is as big as it is now. It was a big deal then, but nothing like it is now. And it was cold out. And honestly, it just was a little strange. You're just standing there with a crowd of people waiting to celebrate, when the ball drops. And then when it's over, everybody just dispersed and we had to walk a cold walk back to the hotel. On TV, it looks so magical. And, it looks awesome. But back then, there weren't stores open. You couldn't stop and get a Starbucks because Starbucks didn't exist yet. And I just remember it being very cold. And it wasn't as awesome as I thought it would be, which perhaps is a metaphor for many New Year's Eves in my life. They are built up to be these amazing parties or extravaganzas. And at the end of the day, it's like, it's late. I'm tired. I'm cold. I want to go home. So I could tick that off my bucket list. A New Year's Eve in Times Square. I also have celebrated New Year's Eve in Las Vegas with my cousin Susie and our friends and her dad Joe. So we went to a really nice dinner, and then I think we were on the Strip somewhere in Las Vegas again for New Year's Eve with a bunch of drunk people. Again, I loved the part where I was with my friends, but again, being in a crowd of people when it's cold, there's a lot of people drinking, and you wait, for midnight, and then everyone's like, Happy New Year, and then you got to get home. It was nice to be there with everyone, but again, I kept feeling like I was missing out on something. I wasn't missing out on getting to have an experience, but I was missing out based on my experience of the experience, right? Do you have anything like that? Like, I know that this is supposed to be an amazing time, and I should be having the time of my life right now. And it's great, and I'm having a good time, but I'm not feeling the exuberance I think I should feel. That would sum up a lot of my New Year's Eves. So I would go places that I thought I was supposed to be, right? I'm going to go to Vegas for New Year's Eve. I'm going to go to Times Square for New Year's Eve. I'm going to do these things. And then I'm just ready to go home and go to bed. Again, a harbinger of what would come for me as I grew older. And I will also say, because I know my cousin Susie listens to this podcast, and I don't know if she'll remember this, although how can she not? We once had a New Year's Eve with one of our friends, and there was an Italian restaurant, and to my cousin I say, Bleadon, I don't remember what this restaurant is, maybe you do. An Italian restaurant, I think it was on Pico in West LA, that we went to, and then we went to a movie. And I insisted we go see the movie Patch Adams, which was an incredibly awful movie. And so we were in the movie when midnight came. We went to see like a 10 o'clock or 10:30 show of Patch Adams. And I would say that would really be a low point of New Year's Eve. I loved being with my friends, but I will forever carry the guilt that I forced my friends into seeing Patch Adams on New Year's Eve. Not one of the better New Year's Eve options that I have engaged in my adult life. And I will also say I remember one New Year's Eve in Chicago, and it was storming. It was a blizzard, and I was young, and I didn't care. And one of my girlfriends from college and her boyfriend came and picked me up. And we were wherever we went to for our New Year's Eve celebrations. And when we came out, everything was covered in snow, and the car was stuck. And in our heels, in our New Year's Eve dresses, we were pushing the car. But we were young. Who cared, right? We were young. That's what you do on New Year's Eve. You do stupid stuff. So I have had many a New Year's Eve celebration in my life, and I have done all the things, you should do, right? Times Square, Vegas, beautiful hotel celebrations with friends, a bad movie. I've done a lot of things for New Year's Eve. These days, I go to bed at 8 o'clock, and the past few years I've stayed up till 9 o'clock because that's when the ball drops in New York at 9 o'clock here on the West Coast. And so I typically watch Anderson Cooper because he cracks me up on New Year's Eve. And then I crawl in bed. And then I awaken somewhere around midnight because there's lots of fireworks and gunfire here in our town. So I do awaken, but reluctantly, somewhere around midnight, and then go right back to sleep. But here's the New Year's Eve I want to share with you about. And this was the one I wanted to go back to because it was one of these moments when something shifted in my life. And that doesn't often happen on New Year's Eve, but this particular one was one of those where a fork in the road showed up, and I made a decision that really, in a beautiful way, shifted the course of my life. How's that for a teaser? for the story I'm going to share with you. So it would have been, I think, New Year's 1981 going into 1982. So really a long time ago. And, it's interesting. I don't know that anyone knows this story. So I was at a New Year's Eve party with my friends, and we were in someone's basement. I think it was Rob's basement. I won't give you his last name, but a guy named Rob who lived in Skokie, and we were in his basement. And so there was a mix of boys and girls, and there was probably alcohol of some kind involved, and pretzels and chips, nothing extraordinary, just, Skokie kids hanging out for New Year's Eve. And one of the guys who was part of the guys' friends group, his name was Wolfie. Really sweet guy. I don't remember much about him other than this part of the story. Well, I remember that he had this cute curly hair. Just a really nice guy. And I had been attending college at Northern Illinois University in DeKalb, Illinois, and my major was television. I had wanted to study TV. But the way the program worked at Northern was you had to get through your first 2 years of academics before you were allowed to start taking the classes for the television major. So I hadn't gone near a TV studio at this point. I was taking classes in calculus and English and social studies and things like that, waiting to be a junior, because at this point, I had just finished the first semester of my sophomore year. And truth be told, I was struggling a little bit at Northern. I had some really good friends there, but there was this one guy who really, I think, was a little mentally unhinged, who had started to bully me. And I won't go into much more about that, but I was young and I didn't know how to handle it, and I don't know that anybody else did. So that was going on underneath the surface of everything as well. So I wasn't taking any of my TV classes yet. And there was this jerk who was not nice to me. And so I'm at this New Year's Eve party, and I happened to sit next to Wolfie, and, we just did that general, "How are you?" "I'm good." "How are you?" "How's college?" And Wolfie says to me, "It's amazing." And he starts telling me about his experience in college. Turns out he was going to Columbia College, which is an arts school in Chicago, so not to be confused with Columbia University. He was going to Columbia College. And he was so exuberant about his experience at Columbia. He said, here's what is so amazing about this school. He says, everyone who teaches there has to be working in the profession that they're teaching about. And he wanted to be a music engineer. So he was already taking classes, and he was working on soundboards and mixing and doing all of the things he wanted to do. He said, this is the thing that's amazing about the school. And I had shared with him, I don't even get to take a TV class for another year. He says, if you were at Columbia, you would be in a TV studio next week. And he was so excited. And I remember we sat there talking about this for like an hour as he was telling me all about Columbia College. It sounded amazing. And as he was telling me about this, I started thinking, I need to check this out. Maybe this would be better for me. And I know now what that was. Like, I could feel my knowingness taking root. I didn't know that then. All I know is I sat at this New Year's Eve party and talked to Wolfie for about an hour and heard how much he was loving his college experience at Columbia. And in no way, shape, or form was I loving my experience at Northern in the same way he was. And I loved television. I wanted to start working in television right away. And so I decided then and there that I was going to check out Columbia while I was home on my winter vacation, because I still had time in Chicago before I had to go back to Northern. So the next morning, I talked to my parents and I said, I'm going to go make an appointment. I'm going to go check it out. And they were supportive of that. And so I went down to Columbia College, which is in downtown Chicago. And I had an appointment there with their advisor. I think he may have even been the dean of the school or something. He was pretty high up. And everything he told me about Columbia just sounded like a dream, that I would immediately be taking classes in video editing and television production, and we would produce shows and I would take film classes. And so I would be immersed in the craft that I had wanted to learn. And I decided then and there I was going to transfer to Columbia. And financially, it worked out to be a wash between what my parents were paying for at Northern, because I had to live in the dorms, so they were paying for room and board, versus, so it was room and board and tuition at Northern. And at Columbia, it was just going to be the tuition and I would live at home. So it wound up being, dollar for dollar, the same thing, because I would live at my parents' house. So I came home from my meeting at Columbia and I told my parents, I want to do this. And they were on board. And so we drove back to Northern, gathered up all my stuff. We canceled all of my classes. I withdrew. I said goodbye to my friends. And I transferred to Columbia College. One of the best decisions I ever made. I was never a good student. I've shared about this before in my classes. I don't like hard work. I have an aversion to it, and I know that probably doesn't sound good, but I will work hard for the things that I love because it doesn't feel like work. So it's not that I will not apply myself, but I really only apply myself when it's my idea and I'm excited and enthusiastic about something. So I was not a good student leading up to the moment that I joined Columbia College, because I had to study these topics I didn't care about. I didn't care about social studies. I didn't care about calculus or algebra or science. I just did enough so that I could pass and maybe get a B. Getting an A wasn't important to me. But the moment I hit Columbia College, I was all in. And I wound up graduating with a 4.0 because I showed up for everything. Everything I did at Columbia College mattered to me. And as Wolfie had said, everyone who taught classes was working in their profession. So, for instance, one of the men who taught my TV production class, he was a director at the CBS affiliate in Chicago. And he would tell us what happens when they do the news. He would share with us how things worked. And we got to know people who worked in the industry. And it's a brilliant school. I don't know what it's like anymore. I graduated in 1984, but I loved going there. Every class I took from Columbia was my favorite class. Every experience I had set the bar for what I wanted to do with my life. You know what was interesting is I wanted to work in television production, and it's not easy to break into the TV industry, especially in Chicago, because people would stay in their jobs until they retired. It wasn't a place where there were always job openings. And so we heard very frequently, just so you know, there are no jobs. You will not get a job in this industry. So perhaps focus on corporate video. So I guess I should say this a little better, that I wanted to work in broadcast television. I wanted to work for a TV station that I could turn on my TV and see their show. The other option was to work in corporate video. So big companies typically would have an internal corporate video department that would make their training videos, their business to business videos and things like that. So our teachers would often say, just to set expectations, you're likely not going to get a job in broadcast, so focus on corporate video. So they were never giving us false hope. It was very clear that we would not get a job in broadcast. Except I was like, I'm going to get a job in broadcast. I don't know how, but I'm going to get a job in broadcast. And as it would turn out, I was one of two graduates of my program the year that I graduated that got a job in broadcast. So my magical manifesting was working back then, and there's way more to the story than that. But Columbia College was an amazing experience for me. And I guess I'll also share with you about this very interesting teacher at Columbia College. His name was Harry Boris, and he taught philosophy. I don't think he could get a job teaching at a university now, because so many of the things that he would talk about or teach us are somewhat inappropriate. Not dark or horrible, but I just think that he was a teacher for a certain time. So the way his classes worked was you had to attend. I know that's a weird thing, but he didn't actually take attendance, but you had to attend. And then he would just lecture, but his lectures were more like his talking. He would teach us concepts, but he was this fascinating man, very left of center, who would just give us these lectures that I was always fascinated by, and would weave in some inappropriate material. And I don't know, I found I was always so engaged with whatever he was talking about. But here's the thing, and here's why everyone took his class. There was not a single test, not a speck of homework, and he didn't take attendance. But then, on the last day of class, he would go down the class list to each person, and he would say, Madam or Sir. He would, so let's say he's calling out to me, Laurel Bleadon, and I would say, yes. He would look at me. He would go, Madam, what grade do you think you deserve? And of course, the answer would be an A. And he would look at you, and if he recognized you and recognized that you had been in class, he would say, okay, and you get an A. So not only were his classes engaging, and I would say they're philosophy classes, and they were meant to make you think, right? To expand consciousness, and they certainly did that for me. And then he would just recognize if he had seen your face in class. He had that kind of mind. And one of the ones I remember was he was going through the final attendance and grade giving, and this one girl, he looks at her, and of course she hadn't been in class because you didn't have to show up. She didn't know the secret though. And he said, "What grade do you think you deserve?" And she said, "An A." And he says, "Madam, your face is not familiar to me. What have we talked about this semester?" And she said, "Greek philosophy." He says, "I would hope so. That's the name of the class. What else have we talked about?" She says, "We have talked about philosophers like Pluto." And he says, "Ah, you must mean Plato." And he gave her a B. I'll never forget that. Harry Boris. I loved his classes. And so I graduated from Columbia College with a 4.0 because I was so engaged, so on purpose and enthusiastic about my life and my career. I learned so much. I had hands-on experience with TV cameras from the 1980s, which were as big as trees. They were these huge pieces of equipment, and you had to learn how to pan them across the studio floor and gather cable as you went, and focus and white balance and all these different things which have zero relevance now. And it's not that, I still apply what I learned there, but it ignited my enthusiasm for learning. I never looked at learning the same way after Columbia College because I learned that if it was something that I wanted to be engaged in, I would succeed. I could always succeed in that which delighted me. And so I share this story with you because it was kindled on a New Year's Eve. That had I not gone to that New Year's Eve party in Rob's basement, had I not sat next to Wolfie, I don't even know his last name so I could find him again, had I not sat next to Wolfie, who was so excited about his experience at Columbia that I wound up checking it out, my life would be different. Isn't that crazy? How these singular moments can change the course of our lives. I would have a very similar experience in 2000 with feeling the urge to go to the University of Santa Monica for spiritual psychology. But that moment in 1981, New Year's, going into 1982, I think that must have been when it was, when I felt a huge yes welling up in me and I followed through on it. Changed my life. Honestly, I have no idea what would have happened in my life had I stayed at Northern. It would not have become what it was. Because of the connections at Columbia College, I got 2 internships. And the internship that I had at the TV station in Chicago turned into a full-time job after graduation. That full-time job led me to connections that had me moving out to Los Angeles to work for a film company, and my life grew from that moment. So we never know when something in our lives is ready to blossom open. We just can't know. That moment didn't happen because I pushed and pulled and strategized. It came to me on the wings of angels and a boy named Wolfie. and then a yes that blossomed open in me. And I've learned to listen for those yeses. They show up when it's their time. And so as we get ready to come into the new year, don't push yourself too hard to have this year be the year that everything changes. This year will be what it's supposed to be. But you, my beautiful beloved, can open to the yeses that have been germinating in you, where your angels are meeting you to help you move into your brighter tomorrows, to help energize your lines of destiny, to help you open to that which delights you and makes you want to apply your life force into co-creation. That's my story on New Year's Eve. So here's to a boy named Wolfie who helped shift the course of my life, and he likely has no idea that ever happened. And now you know the story, because up until this moment, I don't know that anyone else would have remembered that story from my life. And maybe you have your own version of that story. So here's to these beautiful, incredible moments where a path illuminates and says, here, come here, we have something beautiful for you. So here's to beautiful yeses, beautiful opportunities. Here's to all that is blossoming open in our lives right now. You are an incredible blessing in this world, my friend, and I am profoundly grateful for the gift of you. Thank you for letting me share this part of my life with you. I love you very much. I wish you the sweetest of dreams, and we'll connect again soon. Thank you.